Welcome to Under the Fringe. We are your hosts, Andy Yablonsky and Julie Babin, two interior designers with almost 50 years of combined experience. And while we love design, our passion has really become helping the next generation of designers struggle less, earn more, and create more freedom in their lives. We offer a whole host of support options to help you create the structures you need to really thrive and grow. More to come on that at the end of the show.
So common struggles that most designers who are also entrepreneurs experience: organization, knowing your numbers, prioritizing, projecting, and budgeting expenses. Yep. Hiring assistants. These are some of the topics that we're going to be covering with our good friend Jocelyn,
Oh, thank you.
who is a business
So
expert.
I don't know about I
Or
always
whatever version of that she wants to call. But we've worked with Jocelyn
say,
many times in the past, and she has taught us so much as designers of the business side of the interior design firm. So we wanted to have you on because
oh, thank you.
I know I got a lot from you, and so did the staff. So we knew that you would offer tremendous value here.
Oh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you for having me. This is really an honor because I admire the both of you. You two are like really creative, talented women that I've always admired. I mean, the way that you see things, it's really astonishing to me that I grew up in a very artistic family, and I didn't get any of the genes. And so when I look at both of you and Andy painting and doing interior design, and Julie, you're creating these wonderful, beautiful, um, hotel environments. It's just amazing to be around you guys. So thank you for having me here. So like Julie said, we're going to talk about common struggles for designer entrepreneurs. I mean, there's really a lot that business owners struggle with, but I wanted to distill it to four things that I think
Mhm.
are important for business entrepreneurs to really try to make time for and commit to, because being a business owner is not easy, right? And again, we have to get into this mental state of mind that I'm a designer and I create beautiful rooms, and I can't wait to fix this room or do these things to this room. But first and foremost, when you go out on your own, you have to embrace, accept, and realize that you are now a business owner, and you are right. And so
Yep.
all wonderful things that you want to do, like all the creative juices that are flowing and just waiting to burst out, those are great, but you have to also parallel that with the fact that you are running a business, and you have to be just, I think, you have to be just as competent and proficient on the business side as you are on the creative and talent side.
Go.
Not like I said earlier before we started recording, this is the boring stuff. No one wants to do this stuff. This is why
Yeah.
sometimes it's outsourced, or you hire somebody like me to do all this stuff, because one, you don't have the time. Two, you just don't have the mental capacity to do it, because
I think that's a big one.
exactly, because all the creative things that are going around in your head right now is
Yeah.
like, I get that lamp, that sconce, and then oh my God, where's that plug? There's so much. And when I first got into this industry, it's so chaotic.
Yeah.
What's happening? You've heard me say, my head is spinning. What is happening? And so the common struggles that we're going to talk about today, hopefully y'all can relate to. And then two, we can sort of see if we can make the time and commit to these things, because at least for these four things, I think it's going to make your life as a business owner a lot easier, right? So the first thing,
Yeah.
like Julie said, there's four things. There's organization. The second thing is knowing your numbers. Third thing is prioritizing, projecting, and budgeting your expenses. Listen, for us with husbands, that's what they want their wives to do. Come on, man, do you really need another pair of shoes? It's like, how many shoes? Like, you got to prioritize expenses. We got a college fund, you know what I mean? So it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And then the fourth thing is hiring an assistant, right? Because, and
You
you could talk
go.
about this because you had just hired, I think you have a virtual assistant now,
Yeah.
but that one's
Yeah.
because it's like you're so used to doing everything yourself. And it's like, I don't know if I want
Yes.
to delegate it to her because it becomes a control issue. And then I have to manage
A
somebody.
lot of that.
And
Mhm.
it's like, oh, I don't know if I can afford one, So so let's talk.
I think it's those three things. That's such a good point.
Yeah. And I know both of you have struggled with those before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very
Especially
challenging.
Julie. I know Julie has a hard time delegating.
Yeah.
'Cause
And like, that's why it's so great to talk with you, Jocelyn, because you just see things a little differently than we do. And I have honestly learned so much from you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I wish I could see things the way you guys see things, like in a room. Can't dress a room to save my life. It's like, I don't know. I guess that looks cute. I
I
remember
don't believe it.
somebody, Nancy sent me a lamp. Oh my God, this lamp. And I was like, it's a lamp. Like, I don't see it.
I don't know what to do with this.
I know. It's like, I don't know. And what's the big deal?
But
But
Jocelyn does know how to dress herself, really.
Very good.
yeah, I can put an outfit together. I can't put a room together. So
Yeah,
anyway,
it is different.
in terms of organization, I know this is a struggle for most because, like we
Mhm.
talked about earlier, it's in this industry, things can be really chaotic, right? Because there's so
Yes.
many moving parts, so many details, so many things floating in your head. It's like,
Yeah.
get it done. We're putting out fires, and
Yeah.
logistics and all of that. And so I think organization is crucial because
So good.
I think number one, for you and your team, it gives you some sense of grounding, right? Because
Absolutely.
everything else is just like, it's coming at you. Clients calling, this client is, mad about something. This client's like, when are you coming? And then your staff is like, I'm out sick
Yeah.
today, and somebody needs to pick up this thing. There's so much stuff. So I
Yep.
think organization in your business, specifically in this one, is going to be key to give you some grounding, some foundation, and something solid that people,
Mhm.
because sometimes you just need some kind of control
Mhm.
of your day, and not just for you but for your team. Like managing the expectations for
Yeah.
yourself and for your team is very important, right? So I know this sounds super basic,
Yeah.
but you have to live and die by the calendar.
Oh, I
Everything,
love that.
everything needs to live in the calendar. Who's
Yeah.
out this week, who's out this month?
Shared calendar.
Exactly, for you and your
Yeah.
team. So there's two
Yep.
things, right? You have your project timeline calendar, right? For
Yeah.
project, right? And then you
Mhm.
have a team calendar because
Right. Like who's on vacation, who's meeting with this client.
in the office, who's not in the office.
Right. Right.
Those sounds really simple, but
Yeah.
they make a huge impact uh,
Yeah.
in work coordination and coverage and just managing expectations for the week. So when you are having hopefully you're having team meetings, hopefully on Mondays, then
Mhm.
you can do a look ahead in the week or two or three, and then you have your calendar set up and you're like, oh, so and so is going to be out for a week and a half
Yeah.
this week. Let's talk about coverage because she's got all this stuff. And then so and
Yeah.
so, before you leave, can you do a departure memo so that we
Yep.
know where you leave off and someone else.
Sometimes it helps with deadlines if you know, oh, so and so is going to be out of the office 2 Fridays from now. Like sometimes people alternate every other Friday they're out. Well, which one is it again? And then you have it on the calendar and it helps you, I find, complete some of your deadlines. You might move your deadline up and just get it done. You
Yeah,
know, someone's going to be out of the office coming up. It helps you get organized.
absolutely. Getting organized and also continuity for the
Mm-hmm.
for the project, right? And so if let's
Yep.
say Mary is going to be out for the next 10 days next week and she's got, these two active projects that she's doing and she's going to need coverage for that, right? And so we're going to ask Mary to do a departure memo to, obviously she's going to get as much done and move deadlines, maybe like you said, Julie, to get as much done
Mm-hmm.
But all the stuff that she can get through because, there's other things like vendors that are, well, I can't get that to you until next week or whatever. Then she needs to do a departure memo to tell us where she left off, and whoever's covering for her then knows, okay, this is where she left off, so this is where I need to go. It's just that whole transition memo or departure memo, whatever you want to call it. That way
Yeah.
there's continuity. And then when Mary gets back, she's also going to get a memo from the person who is covering her. It's all a transition memo. She goes, okay, I got to do all of these things. Here's where I left off, and then here's where you need to take over.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
that gap that you need to fill. It's a communication thing. And so again, it's all part of organization to make sure everyone's on the same page, there's continuity and things are getting done, and there's minimizing the disruption as much as possible.
That's what I was just thinking too. To me, it reminds me of once you get it set up, it's not that big of a deal to get it set up, but it really helps, and it helps you quickly.
Mm-hmm. So that's crucial. And then, we touched on weekly team meetings. So weekly team meetings, they don't have to cover all the client projects, right? Because you could be on meeting for 3 hours, and we've had meetings.
Yeah.
We're just
That's a good point.
this client and go down the list. It's like, no, let's not do that. So weekly team meetings are meant to set everyone's expectations for the week. It's meant to just talk about what's going on with the business, not necessarily project wise, but like, hey, team, guess what? Showcase is coming up. We're thinking about, submitting for
Yeah.
showcase. If we get accepted, this is what it might look like for all of us. It's again setting expectations for workload. It's good to again
Yeah.
give your staff a little bit of control and give yourself a little bit of control of what's coming up, right? Because everything else is chaotic. And then talk a little bit about, oh, we got 3 new projects. Here's the scope. This one starts next month. This one is still, still being looked at, but we're pretty sure we're going to get it. And then we're pitching to other clients next week, so your team knows what the business is doing.
The phase. Yeah.
And it gets everybody together, and it's like, oh, I belong here. It's like, I feel like this is a company that I'm rooting for because we're going to do great things, and so sometimes principals tend to keep those things to themselves. It's like, I got too much on my head right now. I don't have time for a weekly staff meeting. It's like, they're not, they don't need to know that. They'll know when things come. But it does wonders for yourself and your team to be able to verbalize those things, because it just sets expectations, and like I said, and it gets everybody on the same page. And from
I love what you just said, to verbalize it. That's great. Yeah.
absolutely. And,
It helps you articulate, even if you're the principal, what phase of the project you're in. I think it's important to always be sharing that with the team.
yeah, I think so too. Do you guys do a little bit of that, or do you struggle with that, or?
Well, Andy and I talk about it a lot on the podcast, because completing phases of work associates with, your client meeting agendas, your actual presentations, and then completing a phase is when you're sending your time bills to a lot of times, if you do the flat fees, you've completed certain things, so then the invoice goes out. So it's all connected to the inner workings of the business. So I just always feel like that's a really important way to look at it when you're meeting with your clients. It's not, oh, just another meeting we're having with them again. It's tied to these, what's on the calendar.
Yeah, it's good to debrief with your team if you have a team on how the meeting went, right? It's good for the staff to know, hey, how did it go, and all these things. And again, just getting everybody involved as a team.
Yeah.
So the last thing to talk about under organization is something that we really, really don't do. And we really, really need to take the time. Take the time and commit to doing, because I think it is important as entrepreneurs, as business owners, and as designers. And it's the learning experience, right? And so what that means is, I think it's important for to do a post-project debrief meeting. And I know everyone is like, oh, mentally exhausted from this project. I just finished. I've moved on. I've got 2 other projects I'm working on. My focus is elsewhere, and I've got
Yeah.
issues and problems elsewhere that I need to focus on. But you really do need to at least dedicate 30 minutes to 45 minutes on a post-project debrief meeting. And what this means is this doesn't mean playing the blame game, right? This doesn't
Yeah.
mean, oh, this means, okay, team, let's look at, we just finished this project. Let's look at everything we did right and everything we could have done better.
Yep.
Did we make money on this project? Right?
Oh, great question.
It is. And you can actually run those worksheets on Studio Designer.
Mm-hmm.
Post project, there's a worksheet that you can generate where it tells you, how much money did this project cost you versus how
Mhm.
you got paid.
Yep.
And it takes into account, maybe you ordered the wrong table and you had to eat
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so then that way, when you're looking at your financials, which is the third point we're going to talk about, or the second
Mhm.
talk about, it's like, oh yeah, there's those mistakes that we made. That's why profit margin went down this year.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's important to have these post project debrief meetings to go over these things. And then
I
it
love that.
informs you like, hey, this project was really only 75,000 or 125 or 150, and
Yeah.
it actually cost us 185, right? Because if you take into account all the time the billable time that you wrote off,
Yeah.
Yep.
right? Because you
Yeah.
felt bad because it took you this long to do this thing and you wrote off all this time. If you need to account for all that time that you wrote off. So when you're writing off time, make sure you're recording that because
I
that
was just going to ask you about that because I always remember you talking to us about this, that it's the non-billable time that also needs to be included into the profit and loss.
absolutely, more importantly, the time that you wrote off. That
Right.
real time, that's billable time that you wrote off because you felt bad because
Mhm.
the client, or you're running up the bill and it's starting to run up the budget. And so you kind of
Mhm.
write it off. So that's fine. Whatever you feel is important for client relations to
Mhm.
bill the client, that's okay, because this is a client, if this is a service industry, you have to put service client relations as a priority, because you don't piss off a client because most of your business is word of mouth, right? So,
Yeah.
but here's the
Yeah.
thing, to have an overall idea of how your business is doing, you have to account for all that time you actually did,
Yeah.
Right.
that you wrote off. So
Mhm.
internally, you need to know, if I spent 10 hours on this, but I only billed 5,
Mhm.
that's fine. The client only gets billed 5. That's fine. I get 5 hours work payment. But internally, as a business, I lost 5 hours.
You have to record it.
Which is
And
a
I
thousand
think
dollars
also
if
it's
you're
like,
doing $1 an hour person. That's a lot
Exactly.
of money.
yeah.
And
And
not just you, but for your team, the time that
yeah,
you
yeah,
wrote off from your team. And so then it gives you this bigger picture of, okay, how much did this actually cost me? Because I have to pay my
yeah.
staff this much and I wrote off this much time.
Mhm.
And so really I didn't make that much money. And then in some ways you can analyze that and it'll inform you. So
And I
maybe
also want to encourage the principals of the companies to do that for their time as well. Obviously, if you're paying someone, they have to record, oh, this was non-billable, I was fixing this problem, and then they still get paid. But the owner of the company also should record their non-billable time.
absolutely. I think
And I
you
was gonna say, like, I feel like that needs to be reframed because I think if you have a non-billable situation, most likely you feel bad about it, you're not excited, something is being fixed. And so you might just be like, oh, I don't want to record my time. I just want this to be over. And it's just painful. And so, but it's sort of like really write that down if you're the owner of the company, and you can get away with not recording everything, but I think it's a good habit to get in regardless.
absolutely record everything.
Yeah.
Honestly, if nothing else, is to just really get a sense of how much time you spend on your business and on projects and how much money you're making or not making. So let's just say Oh, so let's say you paid yourself $40,000 this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really that $40,000 this year, you think you only work 40 hours a week, $40,000, but you really probably is 65 or 70 hours a
Yeah.
week for that $40,000.
Yeah.
And
Right.
there's those things, right, that you have to consider. It's like, okay, so what do I need to do to make sure I can spend 40 hours for that $40,000 instead of
Right.
70. And this is what organization is about, right? And making sure that we're running efficiently and everyone's on the same page and minimizing our mistakes,
Yep.
so we can maximize our profitability, right?
And
And
I think
so
if you do record your time, let's say it's something painful, because that's what I keep thinking. Well, the next time after I've recorded my non-billable time, I've moved on from it. This next time around, I'm gonna have a lot more awareness about things that we could have done to avoid this.
absolutely. And that's what that debrief is about, right? That post
Right.
debrief. Because when you look at, okay, what could we have done better? Then you
Mm-hmm.
can identify the gaps, the disconnects, the inefficiencies, and then start putting structures and systems in place so that we can make sure we're minimizing mistakes and any liabilities, right? And
Yeah.
again, it's a process, and you do this whether you're 5 years, 10 years, 15 years in the business. It's
Yep.
always a good thing to do because there's always room for enhancement and improvement, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think principals need to commit to and make time for post-project debriefing meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It's important, not just for the
I love
team
that.
business. And again, it's not meant to be a blame game, right?
Yeah.
You speak in we's, not you or me. It's
Mhm.
we, right? So, okay, so we only have an hour, so I want to move on.
Favorite things. One of our favorite things that Andy and I talk about is just like this attitude of do it 1% better each time. And that's how we sort of like don't beat ourselves up. Next time I'll do it, 1% better. So even if you extend that graciousness to your team, and like you said, speak in we's, it seems like everyone will appreciate that and also learn from it too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think everyone is learning and growing, right? This is why I
Yeah.
said I don't like the word expert. I'm learning and growing. I'm growing and expanding every day. I
Or
make mistakes.
you're an experienced novice.
A seasoned, a seasoned
Yeah, you guys,
professional.
Jocelyn didn't want us to refer to her as a business expert, so we were dancing around it.
Yeah, it's I think a seasoned professional is good, but I think we
It's
all
an
are, right?
expert.
We're all seasoned professionals, and if we
Yeah,
view ourselves as professionals, being professional means
yeah.
knowing your limits and knowing, you don't know everything, and that there's so many more things that you can learn and grow. And so I think these debrief meetings is exactly that. It's like there's room for enhancements and improvements everywhere at any time. I don't care if you're 20-year, 25-year veteran in this industry. There's always something to learn because technology, things are changing, innovation, and there's just new ways of doing things that are smarter and not harder, right? And so we have to keep
Mhm.
identifying those things. Um, so let's move on to knowing your numbers. And I know this is not fun at all. Like, who wants to do numbers?
We
Some
make
people
it fun.
disagree.
We're gonna make
Yeah.
it fun.
Well, here's why I disagree, because I think when you know your numbers, you're creating a safety net for yourself. And when you feel safe, you're able to expand in ways that maybe you wouldn't be able to if you were in a contracted state of fear, stress, or whatever other emotion might pop in those moments. So if you're not willing to look at your numbers, I'm guessing it's because you're afraid of looking at them.
Yeah.
And then if you are willing to look at them with just clarity, right? Like we're just talking about a space of clarity. But I think when you know your numbers, the ability to refocus, reconnect with what you need to do in your business, all of those things become top of mind and allow you to then shift into hopefully a profit if you're at a loss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you saying, Andy, is that knowing your numbers is empowering.
So
It
empowering.
is. It's so empowering.
And so I think, like you said, many people don't want to look at it because I just don't want to look at it. You
Yeah.
know, maybe it's fear-based, but I think also for some, it's intimidating. I don't know what gross profit
It
margin.
is. I think that's probably the main
What does
reason.
gross profit margin mean? I have no idea what that is. Even if I Google it and I read what it means, I have no idea what they're talking about,
Yeah.
right?
Break
Um,
that down for us.
yeah,
Break it
you
down.
know, it's like, why do I need to know my monthly burn rate? Who
Yep.
cares? You
Mhm.
know, I just need
Yeah.
to know my income, how much money I made that year, and what my bottom line was, right? But what if this, and then are you comparing this year to last year,
Yeah.
right? Are you comparing this quarter to last quarter, right? So, why is that important? Who
Yeah.
cares, right? I don't need to, I get a book, get a
Yeah.
bookkeeper, guys. I don't need to worry about this stuff. I just outsource it to my bookkeeper. Here's what your bookkeeper keeps your books. That's exactly what they do.
Mhm.
But they're not there to analyze the numbers for you and inform you of the things that you need to do for your business, for the health of your business, for
Mhm.
sustainability, profitability, right? So as business entrepreneurs, right? So
Mhm.
again, as designers, we're like, I just want to get to my next project and make this next beautiful room so I can have it photographed and
Yeah.
down with, this is what I want to do, is what I love to do. Um,
Yeah.
then, when you get to the nitty gritty stuff, like I said earlier, is the boring stuff. Nobody wants to pay attention to this stuff, but there's not going to be many more photographs taken if you're not sustaining your business,
Oh
right?
my God, that's so scary.
It is scary, right?
Hmm.
So as business entrepreneurs, your focus needs to be in sustainability,
Yeah.
profitability. Sustainability, because you want to make sure that you have staying power in the business,
Hmm.
right? And two, you have a responsibility to your staff.
Yes.
Hmm.
And
Right?
yourself, right?
That's
Like I consider myself staff. Like
Yeah.
exactly.
I have a life to pay for and all these other things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And to be treated well.
That's heavy. That is a
Hmm.
heavy responsibility that you need to take seriously, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're growing and you're hiring staff, you
Hmm.
have a responsibility,
Yeah.
right? So sustainability, profitability, right?
I love
Okay.
that.
If you look at this year and you're like, oh my gosh, we had 3 more projects this year than we did last year. We made
Hmm.
more money than we did last year. Why is my bottom line less than last year?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's why knowing your numbers is important, because you can then go back and go, oh, this is why, this is why, this is
Yeah.
why. I don't know why. Let's dig deeper, right?
Right.
Bookkeeper is not going to do that, right?
No.
You can ask your bookkeeper for a deep dive and say, can you give me a list of items that I spent on freight? You know,
Yeah.
give me a list of items that I spent on software subscriptions,
Yeah.
all
Marketing. Did I have an increase in my marketing budget? And is that why I got new projects,
correct.
right?
Maybe my travel
Mm.
expense was more this year because I went to High Point, I went to Vegas Market, I went to Paris. I was like, oh shit, I spent this much on travel, or I spent
Hmm.
this much on marketing. Now you take those numbers, right? And you say, okay, I spent $200,000 on marketing this year. What did I get out of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think that's that
What
for me.
That's
Oftentimes,
a great.
is it worth it?
what was that? So there's two things, right, that I hear
Yeah.
all the time. Well, I got great exposure. Right?
Hmm.
This is great because if you're in
Yeah.
the first few years or first, it's you're building your brand recognition, all that. Those are all very important. And I do encourage you, your first few years, you got to do a PR push for that,
Absolutely.
right? But you
Yeah.
also have to track like the return on these things, because you can't
Yeah.
keep spending the same amount every
Same
year
one.
and
Yeah.
not looking at the return on the
Hmm.
marketing expenses that you're making, right? Because
Right.
if you spend 25% of your income on marketing, like you could just look at, okay, this is how much income I made this year. This is how much I spent on marketing. Well, that's literally 25% of my income. Now you
Yeah.
look at that 25% chunk, that's a lot of money. And I've seen that.
Yeah.
Seen 25%. Okay. Um, what did you get out of it? It's hard to quantify and qualify exposure. It's very hard,
Yep.
right? It's a soft thing, right? But the hard thing is how many clients did you get out of that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That specifically you can track, right? And so it could be from your, social media is free, basically.
Mhm.
Right. And so, oh, I got a query on social media. So you can track that. It's like, oh, we got this client through social media. Oh, we got this client through I was speaking at a panel and
Mhm.
this potential client approached me, and that's how we got that project. So you track
Yeah.
the things to make sure, because if you want to travel to be a speaker on that panel, it might be worth it because
Right.
you got
Yeah.
$5,000 project out of it. And so it's these things that you just have to sort of take a look at and prioritize, right? Which is the third thing we're going to talk about, right? Prioritizing your expenses.
Mhm.
But I think it's important for business owners to look at things critically, right? And not just say, well, I need to do this for this reason. That's fine if you're committed to the reason and the purpose of that
Mhm.
expense, but make sure you're tracking to make sure you're getting the value and the return on that investment that you made for that
Mhm.
marketing,
Oh, I
right?
love that.
And that's all it is. It's just be critically think about it.
Mhm.
And so knowing your numbers is important, because then once you can see this on a piece of paper and really critically look at it and go, okay, um, yeah, I spent too much on events this year,
Mhm.
and really didn't get anything much out of it. So maybe next year we'll do something different. Or next year, we don't need, or it could also inform you on bigger things like, well, our lease is up for renewal this
Yeah.
year. And
Right.
really, everyone's working from home, or most of my staff doesn't really need to be here, or, do I really need this big space?
Right.
Right.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
and this could inform me like, yeah, I think we need to start looking for another space because our lease is up in October. Actually, the ideal thing is you should be critically looking at this a year or a year and a half before your lease is over, right?
Absolutely.
Actually 2 years,
Yeah.
but I'm being generous here. So like if your lease is up in 2026, you should start thinking about, what do you want to do with this space, and do you want to relocate or do you want to keep it? Because chances are
Mhm.
at renewal your rent's going to increase, and if you were already struggling with that rent, probably not a good idea to renew it. Or
Mhm.
really think about your needs, and do I really need this big space?
Mhm.
Can I, downsize to a smaller space to save money? Because there's two big things that are the biggest expenses for any business across the board. Can you guess what those two things are?
Well, rent is definitely one of them if you have an office space.
Exactly.
Your
What's the second?
people.
Salary.
Salaries. Exactly.
Yeah.
Compensation and rent,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Compensation you cannot take for granted, because especially if you have
Right.
people, you
Yeah.
need to make sure you are giving raises. And if you're profitable enough, you could do bonuses, discretionary.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to take care of your people,
Right. Because
right?
Yeah.
how expensive is it if you don't retain those people? Like if they're good people and you don't retain them, it's even more expensive to hire someone else.
Very competitive.
Yeah. I love that point.
And so you gotta take care of your people and you gotta pay your rent.
Indeed, you do.
And
Right?
I think it's important to think about that because it's easy to say, well, my clients are the most important thing. And Andy and I always talk about on the podcast how it's about all of your relationships in the business, the vendors, the team, the clients. But sometimes I think it's easy to focus on the client, the client, the client. But I've heard a lot of business people say, actually, your team is the most important thing.
It is the most important. I mean, client relations is up there, right? And we're
Yeah.
gonna talk a little bit about that in the prioritize and budgeting and stuff,
Mhm.
because I do have some comments there about client relations for that.
Yeah.
your team is your core, right?
Mhm.
It's the core of your business. Without your team, it's just you. And you knew when you first started this business, you couldn't do everything, right?
Mhm.
So when we talk about sustainability and maximizing your profitability, right? You can't do that by yourself.
No.
It's not sustainable, and there's no way you're going to be maximizing your profitability doing it by yourself.
Right.
So you hire a team, and a good team. And if you hire somebody and they're good, you need to retain them,
Right.
because the cost to the business when someone good leaves is exponential.
It's like double, right?
Exponential,
Mhm.
because
Wow.
you
That's way
have
more
to
than
think
double.
about the time, the business disruption between the
Mhm.
time that person leaves and you're recruiting, right?
Mhm.
Which takes months,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then you get desperate and you're like, I'll just hire so and so, and that's where you get
Yeah.
in trouble because you didn't take the time.
Yep.
You got desperate, you got scared,
Yeah.
and you're just trying to figure stuff out. So that's when things go awry, because, and you guys know, we've hired in desperation before, so you guys know.
We have.
We have suffered because of it. So take
Yeah.
your time,
Take
right?
your time. Yes. Hire slowly, fire quickly.
Exactly. And so when you do find someone good, again, it's a crapshoot. You just never know. But
It
when you
always
do
is. Yeah.
find someone good and is a superstar, you have to take care of that person,
Yep.
because that person can make or break you.
Mhm.
Wow.
Have someone good and is, because think about it, someone good is someone you can rely on. You don't have
Mhm.
to manage them. You
Right.
know stuff
Mhm.
can be done. You know that 99% of the time is going to be right? Because no one's perfect, right? Um, but you can rely on, it's a peace of mind that is invaluable. When you have someone good, you can't put a price on that,
Yeah.
right? And so the
Well,
retention.
you can. It's expensive.
Exactly. And so when you do have someone good, you have to make sure that you're creating a culture that is in allowing this person to grow and
Yeah.
allowing this person to thrive. And then you're rewarding them for their
Right.
performance, right? Because, and you have to have all of those things, because if you and you have to have open communication. So now we're going to get into HR, which is another episode.
Yes, we'll bring you
I
back.
know. We'll have you back because Andy and I like to do these quarterly like check-ins,
Mhm.
where we're reviewing goals and helping, we're coaching the girls on it. And so this would be a great topic to come back to
Too,
in
but we'll
quarter
come back
two if
to
you're
it,
open to
we
it.
we only have an hour here, but I do want to
Yeah.
get so knowing your numbers, I just want to wrap this topic up. Knowing
Mhm.
your numbers is important. Please don't be intimidated by it. Please just take the time to, if you have to Google it, if you have to talk to somebody and be like, listen, I really don't understand what gross profit margin means. What does that mean compared to net profit? Like, I have no idea. And why is that important? Like, you could just at least know the basics, so that when you are meeting with your accountant or your bookkeeper,
Yeah.
you understand it, and you understand how that data and how those numbers can actually empower you and inform you of what you need to do for your business to have sustainability and maximize profitability, right?
Mhm.
Um, so take the time to know your number. So number three is prioritizing, projecting, and budgeting your expenses. So for those that have been in business for the 3 years, this is hard to do because you just don't know. You have
Yeah.
no historical data. I don't know how things are. I've only been in this for a couple of years. I have no idea what I'm doing. By the fourth year, you should already have some historical data of how your
Yeah.
first 3 years went.
Mhm.
Okay. And you should already know like what worked and what didn't work.
Yep.
At least have a good idea, right? We don't know everything, but we have a good idea. So your fourth year is really the year that you're going to be like, all right, we need to tighten stuff up, right?
Yeah.
And
That's so true.
Okay, so if I look at the last 3 years, okay, first of all, let's just throw out the first year, because we are
Rough.
push brand,
Maybe you're taking projects that you won't take in the future.
exactly, and we're just building our portfolio, let's just throw out the first year. The second year, okay, we starting to get our groove, I got a little bit more projects and my photographs have been taken and my portfolio looks good. My website's starting to look like it's not so,
Mhm.
spare. By the third year, it's like, okay, I think we're all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And so on your fourth year, that's when you go, okay, we kind of know what we're doing now.
Hmm.
And so if I look at last year, right, and I look at how much we spent on this, how much we spent on that, how much I spent on this, I can project next year how much I'm going to spend.
Wow.
And
Yep.
so but along those lines, you're prioritizing, right? Like we talked about earlier, it's like, oh yeah, I spent too much on that travel or this and
Mhm.
that, and I spent too much on this thing,
Yep.
maybe
The
I
other thing I like to put on the calendar are the photo shoots. So you have one
that
photo shoot per quarter is a good like
absolutely
financial planning, I think.
project for photo shoots, you
Mhm.
project for mistakes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You build a cushion for mistakes, right?
Hmm.
100%.
Because let's be honest, mistakes will happen. I don't care how organized you are.
Yeah.
Mistakes
Yeah.
happen and clients will change their mind. Like, I don't
Yeah.
like that, or clients become
Right.
difficult and you have to eat it. Client relations mistakes is, you
Yep.
know, I don't
Tweaking
know,
it.
10% maybe if you look at your numbers and you know how much percentage of your income was mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
10% is pretty accurate. I think like I try to keep it less than that, but it seems
Oh
like
yeah.
that's just the nature of the business. And
business.
it was
I feel
sort
like
of
that's a
like,
good cushion and you probably don't use it all.
Yeah. I
hopefully not, but I would say, just like in training someone new, they're going to make a mistake that I might not catch right away. And as we know, this is unfortunately one of the worst parts about our business is that you don't know what the mistake is until the thing is built and it's installed. And so you have
Yeah. And it's
a
attached to like other
fabrication
things.
cost, and then you've got whatever it's a delivery cost, a pickup cost, a new right? There's all these things. And so
yeah.
we're talking about exponential things like those mistakes are often costlier than the original item.
Hmm. And I
Yeah.
also tell the clients that we have a 10% line item at the bottom of the budget. That's a contingency. Because, sometimes things are just weird and arrive and there's something wrong and you have to fix it. It's not a big majority of the time. And I sort of prime them to have some of that set aside.
And
Um,
that's their responsibility.
Sometimes also helps.
Responsibility.
That's good. It's good to manage the client's expectations about it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't always have to fall on the designer because honestly, most of the times, and Andy and I have analyzed this where things have gone wrong, it's usually like not even the designer's fault. It's just like something weird happened.
Yeah, and
So,
you can
um,
present it in so many ways, like we talked about before. You can piece this in so many, cut and dice this in so
Yeah.
many ways. But there's also room for you to increase your margin a little bit,
yeah.
cover for some of those things, so that it doesn't have to show up on a contract as miscellaneous things or
Oh,
unexpected things that might happen. Because psychologically, for a client, it's like, what am I paying 10% more for something? What does this mean?
oh, just roll it in. That's a
Right.
good
It
idea.
might invite more questions that you
Hmm.
can't really answer. And if you
You
do,
could just roll it into the overall.
I think so, even if you have to like increase your margin by like 5% or 2%, it's, across
Hmm.
the board, that might be enough for you to cover
Hmm.
things that might happen. But, I think again, with client relations, you have to think about how it's received on the other end,
Yep.
on a
Yeah,
client side, right?
keep
Because
it simple.
how you present it, and is this gonna generate questions, right? And if it doesn't, it means I think it could be problematic because you have to explain things.
Mhm.
And you already know you have to explain things to client because you have to constantly explain your value as a designer to these clients. As you're, yes, this is my billable rate and this is why, and this is my administrative rate and this is why, so it's the one less thing you have to explain to the client. So if you're able to just fold it into your product margin, or if you want to take a critical look at your billable rate and see if it's at market, commensurate with your experience and your portfolio and what you bring to the table, then that's what you do. Again, knowing your numbers is important because this is what's going to help you put
Mhm.
those things together, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, there's a lot of psychology around client relations.
Isn't that like more than half?
Yes, because we are in a service industry, and so
Yeah,
you have
that's
to
number one,
write
service.
a contract and communicate to your client in a way that doesn't generate things like what, you know?
Yeah, like if something is in the contract, but you didn't verbally say it, those sometimes are sort of things that it's not as easy to enforce.
It's true. Yeah. So let's get back to prioritizing and budgeting for your expenses. So now that what you spent last year, what worked, what didn't work,
Yeah.
what your yield was, what your return was on certain things, and then you project for next year. This year I know there's 3 new projects that are gonna start next year. I need to step up.
Yep.
Hmm.
Right? So you need to project for staffing for those
Absolutely.
new big projects. And so you need to start recruiting, and what does that expense look like? And you need to start projecting and budgeting for that, for the staffing. Um, and other things like, well, I really need I was asked to be a speaker in this panel, so budget for that travel,
Hmm.
everything that has to do with the new staff. I also
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
your benefits, your bonus, your taxes and all this other stuff. You just need to start budgeting and projecting for that. If that's not what you want to do, obviously you can outsource that to somebody else. There are
Hmm.
accounting firms that will do that for you, for a price,
I was gonna
right?
say, but you have to pay for that too. So there's still a budget involved.
Exactly. And so, but it does, it is an overwhelming thing to do, projecting, budgeting. And
Hmm.
so if you want to pay someone to do that, it might be worth it for you, especially if you've been in business for a while and you have a big team, and it's just something that you don't have the time or the mental capacity to do, might be worth it. So again,
Yeah.
prioritizing, is the outsourcing of this worth it for you? And if the answer is yes, then do it. Right.
Yep.
But again, you have to know your numbers to know what to prioritize in terms of your expenses, right?
Mhm.
And then the last thing we're going to talk about is hiring an assistant.
Yeah.
Uh, and I know,
Hiring. Oh, I know. Yeah, that's such a good
right?
one.
So there's a couple of things I hear, sometimes from Andy and Julie. Uh, and one is I can't afford it.
Mhm.
Because I can't afford it too. I don't have time to manage somebody,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And what's the third? I think that was the second one, right? And so you
Those are
have
the two main common, like the two most common ones that I mean, even I have an assistant and I still think sometimes like I just don't have time to manage him right now. Like it's so challenging.
it is, and it's also expensive, right? To have somebody, but
Yeah.
I want business owners to look at it this way, right? We are in a service industry, and so one of the ways that you're going to be able to maximize your time to serve your client and increase the quality of your service to your client is to have help.
Yes.
And help doesn't mean that it's going to release you from all the pressure. Help means that you have to manage this person so that this person can work efficiently alongside you.
Yep.
And then from there, things get easier. So there's a lot of time, commitment, and investment you have to make when you hire an assistant. Time and commitment that most entrepreneurs find hard to do because they're juggling everything already. Now I have to, but we all know, I think mentally, we all know that it's worth it, but it's still hard to find the time and commit to it because there's two things that's going on here. One, I don't have the time. And then two, you have to really honestly ask yourself, is this a control issue? Right? Because it
Really
is,
good question. Yeah.
it is
I
because
think,
if you're type A, we all are in this call. Control is very hard because you want it done right. And it's your name. It's
Yeah.
your name. And you want it done
yeah,
right. And the only person that can do it right is you. And that is something we need to let go.
Yep.
We need to
hmm
trust somebody else to do it. And it doesn't just mean, okay, this person made 10 mistakes and I just can't trust them. Then, okay, maybe that's true. But the one thing you need to ask is not so much this person isn't doing that, I don't think this person has it. You have to ask yourself, did I give this person enough time
or
and
clear a direction.
enough of myself?
Yeah,
I invest enough of myself on this person so that this person is set up to succeed,
yeah,
right? Because your job as an entrepreneur and as a supervisor to this
Yep.
member is to set them up for success.
yeah.
So the first inclination we have is, oh my God, this person's not working out. I'm
hmm
guilty of that. Okay. This person is, I can tell from the first 2 days is like, this person is not going to work out.
Yeah.
But after a while, I catch myself and I go, okay, let me reinvest,
hmm
invest a little bit more on this person because maybe this person learns a different way.
hmm
But this person really wants to be here and it seems like
Yeah.
they're really committed. And then after like 2 or 3 weeks, when when your conscience tells you you've done everything,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and you're like, okay, this person
No
just is
improvement.
the
Sure.
right
Yeah.
person, then the best thing you could do is let that person go. Do not lead that person on and keep them on and making like, oh, well, she did this one thing right. The 9 things were she did this
Yeah.
one thing right. We give allowances to these people. It's like, because I just don't have time to recruit. I don't
Yeah.
have to do this over again. The
Yeah.
thing you could do for yourself is just cut your losses
And it'll be better for them to go ahead and move on.
because in my many years of management and HR,
Mhm.
I will guarantee you it only is a detriment to your business when you keep someone on that you know isn't right for the job, but only
Uh-huh.
after you know that you've done
You feel
everything.
bad.
You've done everything, but you
Right.
have to check yourself.
Yeah.
I give good directions. Did I give this? Did I include them in the process? Did
Yeah.
were they on the same page as me? Right? The
hmm
staff meetings where was I asking them questions? Were I asking when my
Yeah.
interacting with this person, asking them for any call outs? Do you need any support? Like, am I
Yeah.
checking in with this person? Like, you have to do your part. Like, you
Yeah,
can't
because I find that people need to be clear in their directions sometimes.
absolutely, and not just
That
but
can be a big part of
inclusive.
it.
Inclusive is the word here because if
Yeah.
you don't include your staff in discussions, and like I said earlier, it's like if you had a meeting with a client, you need to debrief your team.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they need to know how the business is doing, that they're part of something. And then
Yep.
if you met with a client about it's a site visit, right? And you didn't bring your assistant with you, or she had an appointment and so she couldn't take notes, and so you have to tell your assistant, okay, here are the notes that I took, can you just distill this down into a memo or whatever it is, however you your system to work. But then you have to tell them all the nuances. Oh my God, yeah, there's this one landing is going to be tough. I don't know what
Yeah.
landing, but I think she wants tile. So all these nuances you have to include them because so
Yeah.
the this person is aware of what's happening. And so if
Yeah,
you
because I've run into the experience where principals of design companies they're very fluid and they just go in and out of meetings with their clients because maybe they know them or but like all this time might go by and maybe they met with someone and the team doesn't even know.
yeah,
And so if someone meets with a client, the team needs to know what day, what did you do? Did you
on
measure
the calendar.
something? Like a lot of times it's on someone's notebook in the car and it's like some notebook and some piece of paper. And it's like, what did you measure? What did you do? What was the date? Um, Always, because it's really easy. The principals of companies know the clients so well that they might just kind of forget that they even saw that person.
Yeah, they're in their zone.
Yeah, they're in their zone,
And they're in their
enjoying it.
creative zone. And there's all these
Yeah.
things going around in their head. And
Mhm.
they forget that they're running a team and they're running a
Yeah.
business.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
for the good of the team and for the good of the business, you need to download,
Yep.
Mhm.
right? Because it's your team that's going to support you on this project. And so there are some principles, and we've worked with one, right? um, each of us in our own careers, I'm sure there's one that you could identify
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
would tell you things on an as needed basis.
exactly.
Not things at all.
Exactly. And so put yourself in that position when you used to work for somebody who only gave you information as needed.
Yeah.
How effective and how useful did you feel?
Right.
Not very much.
Right.
Just kind of waiting around.
Right. You're just feeling mechanic and robotic, right? Because
Yeah,
you're here to push this button when they tell you to push this
your
button.
on and off switch.
Yeah, the date and time that you push this button is this, right? And you have no other information around why am I pushing this button?
Yeah. It's tough.
Mhm.
Button do,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so there are people that function that way. And so you have to put yourself in a position. The best quote that I know and live by, I try to, is this quote that I'm sure you've all read is be the person you needed when you were younger,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
I apply that in the workplace.
Oh,
Like be the person that you needed when you
Yeah, I
were
totally
a
love I
junior
love that.
somebody. When you were a junior somebody,
yeah.
be the person that you needed when you were a junior somebody. When you had no idea what you were doing, you were new.
Yeah.
And so I apply that in every aspect of my life, right? Whether it's my kids and parenting or in friendships or in a workplace, right? Because you have to put yourself in that position when you just feel so useless when somebody only gives you a little bit of information. No one wants to
Yeah.
feel mechanical or robotic. No one wants to just push the button when they're told to push the button,
Yeah.
right? They want to be empowered. They want to be involved. They want to know what's going on because listen, I have more to offer and I can offer you these things. What can you offer me if you know all these things? What can you possibly do? I'm doing everything. What can you possibly do? Well,
Yeah.
I can anticipate things. I can say, well, remember, our wallpaper installer is going to be over here for this project. So he's not going to be able to do this. So we need to start looking for another installer for that project. So sometimes they have information that you don't have that they can put on the table that will be for the better of the group, for the good of the group, for the good of the business. And you just have to trust that everyone has value. Everyone.
It's
Doesn't
true.
matter. So hiring an assistant is very crucial because it's the resource and support that you need to
Yeah.
not only maximize your service and quality to your clients, but it's also it gives you time for business development. It gives you time for growth of your
Mhm.
business, and it gives you peace of mind that
Yeah.
you don't have to carry everything, that there's
Mhm.
somebody there that's going to help you and is committed to the team and committed to the goals of the business with you, as
Yeah.
long as you include them,
And
right?
I've noticed a lot, Jocelyn, and I know you'll have an opinion on this, that these principals of these design companies they usually have a junior designer or somebody along those lines. And sometimes they need an executive assistant, like, you know, someone who's helping you with everything except the design part.
Yeah, they do. So I call that a personal assistant.
I was just going to say
Mhm.
that. I was just thinking to myself that maybe what most of us need is actually a PA
I
because
think there's a big thing there.
a lot of your time gets eaten up with things that aren't actually business related that you
Correct.
could push off to somebody
Yeah.
else. We,
Yeah,
we
Yeah.
yeah. And if you feel that the health of your business is in a place where you can hire a PA,
Mhm.
please do so, because you know it's only going to help you and free up your time to do more client pitches and business development and to network more for your business, right? Um,
Mhm.
I want to go back to client relations real quick because we're running out of time. I do want to go back to marketing a little bit. And so when we talked about prioritizing, projecting, and budgeting expenses, we touched on the marketing and making sure, because that really is some of the bigger expenses that we have, right, as businesses, right, after salaries and rent.
Mhm.
Um, so it's really good for us to take a look at this huge expense to make sure that we're getting the most out of it and the value out of it, right? And
Mhm.
when I query interior designers and I ask them, where do most of your business come from? Um, a huge chunk of businesses come from word of mouth. Would you agree?
Mhm. No, I would say like a very high percentage for all of us.
Okay. So when it is word of mouth, that's saying, more than 50% of your projects are coming from word of mouth. And your
Yeah.
marketing expenses are going to other things, which I'm not saying is not good, right? I mean, branding is good, exposure is good, but you have to also invest in the word of mouth source,
right.
right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
some designers have referral fees that they give on the word of mouth. Some designers give
Yeah.
client gifts, if they referred somebody. But I do want us to also think about continuing to foster relationships with past clients. And it's not just, oh, because they referred somebody and then you give them a gift or a referral fee. But I
Yeah.
think continuing to foster these relationships, like maybe, hey, it's been a while. How are you doing? Let's go out to lunch or, have coffee or just drop by maybe and, bring them, cookie or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how salesmen for
Yeah.
showroom.
Yeah.
So, because they're keeping their client relationships,
Yep.
maintaining them. It's
Yeah.
the FaceTime, it's the top of mind uh,
Mhm.
type of things that we have to do with clients, right? And so I think it's, these little touches
Mhm.
in between things where you got something out of it is good.
Yeah.
It's not just when you got something out of your client, oh, you got paid or you got referred,
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I do think that we should, continue to think of creative ways to foster these relationships with past clients because most of your businesses are coming from past clients, right? And so,
Yeah.
um,
True.
whether it's a Christmas card or,
Mhm.
a Valentine's thing that you drop off or whatever, but it's just showing them that, look, I still think about you and, I still enjoyed our project and thank you
Yeah.
for being such a great client. So as I'm gonna leave the podcast with that just because I do feel like we're a service industry, client relations is important,
Yep.
everything is important. But being a business entrepreneur is not the easiest thing. It takes a lot of courage to go out on your own. I mean, Andy, Julie, you know firsthand, obviously,
Yep.
that it
Yeah.
took. Andy was teaching. She was a teacher. And then I was like, just gonna jump and go into your design and go on our own. And so, it's a lot and it's overwhelming. But I
Yeah.
promise you, if you just take the time for those four things that we talked about, and some of these things may apply or may not apply to people who are just thinking about going on their own, but it's good to know
Yeah.
because before you know it, you're in your third year and you're like, oh, what's going on? So it's good to know these fundamentals. And again, this is just a
Yeah.
for the many struggles for business entrepreneurs. But I think if you just, like I said, commit and make the time for these four things, you're going to be on
Mhm.
track.
Yes,
Uh,
they're foundational pillars for sure.
yes, foundational pillars. Because again, as I said earlier, as business entrepreneurs, there's a, you need to think about sustainability, right? Because you have a responsibility to yourself and to your team and to your brand, and
Yeah.
then maximizing your profitability because we want to make money.
Sure
And
do.
we don't want to work for free. Who
Yeah.
wants to work for free?
This is
You
not a
I feel like I
hobby.
did it for a long, long time and I'm done.
I'm very clear on that.
know, I hope you found this helpful.
So
Uh,
helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Great.
because you really do look at things differently than a traditional designer thinks of things. So it's important to refocus your mind, learn about, like you said, learn about all these business terms, and really embrace it too. And you don't have to be an expert at business, but you really do need to be able to be in the field and operating to a degree. So it was incredibly impressive what you shared with us, Jocelyn.
Thank you. Yeah, you really can't phone it in.
No. And because I don't think we actually properly introduced you at the beginning of our call, can you just give us like your elevator pitch of who you are, what you do, where you are, where you're working right now?
Oh, so I was well, so I've been in a corporate world and their operations management and HR and business management in general for 25 plus years, and I retired, and my good friend Nancy Evers pulled me into the interior design industry, and I've been in it ever since. Function,
The day of your retirement, by the way, she pulled you in.
right, and just in terms of like operations, business strategy, and finance strategy for her and her business. So I've been as a business consultant for Nancy primarily and functioning primarily as a CFO for her business, Evars Collective.
Mhm.
But I'm supposed to be retired. So I'm kind of just doing this on the side, not really a side. This is
Not
it.
a side hustle.
And so I do like to call myself a seasoned professional as opposed to a business expert, like you mentioned earlier. But so far,
Mhm.
I'm really enjoying my time being an empty nester with my husband, and just enjoying my time learning about and growing within this industry and taking a look at all
Mhm.
the struggles and hopefully trying to help out any way that I can for Nancy and other clients. And so, yeah, it's been great. And I've known you guys for a long time now since my early days. And so I've seen your struggles and I've seen your successes and I've learned from the two of you as well. And so I think the best thing that I've really gained in this industry, like I've mentioned before, is the sisterhood in this industry, the supportive, all this creative, talented, amazing women, and the sisterhood that's within this industry is just incredible and amazing. Something I didn't really get in the corporate world, unfortunately. I mean, there
Yeah.
are a lot of women that I admired and that I looked up to in the business, in the corporate business world outside of, I should say, outside of the interior design business industry. But, it's pretty cutthroat.
Mhm.
Here in the design industry, it's just amazing to see, creative and smart and talented women just making beautiful things and supporting other women who are making beautiful things and successes of their businesses. So I really am happy to be part of the industry and working with all of you guys.
Well, we're so happy and lucky to have you and know you. And I know Nancy is thrilled that you were able to step in when you did and have, really allowed her business to become what it is with your acumen that you're providing. So, I mean, I know she is like a firecracker in her own right.
She is.
But I can't remember if somebody just said this the other day. I feel like it was a recent quote, but if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
You guys are going together, which is really beautiful to watch. So
It's been a journey, and it's been fun, and I've learned a lot along the way, like I said, but the scenery has been beautiful too.
how could it not be?
Oh, it's so glamorous.
Well, you're so generous, and we're so thankful that you were available today, and we're delighted. I think that this is right in our wheelhouse of this podcast and what we're bringing to solo entrepreneurs who are trying to scale. So this is really, really helpful information, and we will have you back again to talk more about many other things.
I'd be happy to come back. You two are doing amazing things. I love it.
Thank
you
you.
so much for
Yeah,
having
we
me.
love you, Jocelyn. Thank you.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
All right, talk soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening and being part of our community. Speaking of community, please head over to our website and sign up for podcast alerts and blog posts. And if you're looking for more resources to uplevel your business, create more time in your schedule, and improve your profits, we have a blueprint for your success that covers mindset, systems, business, teams, and tools. Think of us as your unaccredited university. Visit us at under-the-fringe.com and tune in next week for our next deep dive on creating more freedom and less struggle.